everyone. What's up and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I'm your host, Emily Hayden, and I could not be more excited for today's episode. Today we have with us Andrew F. Carter, Pastor Andrew F. Carter, and I'm really excited to get into what he's doing now, his ministry here in LA, and also where he came from, because it's probably not what you're thinking. So everybody, please give a warm welcome to Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. So I'll give him a little context. I first came across you on Instagram, and on Instagram, it's linked below. So everyone make sure to check him out there. You post different like messages and stories and prayers and things like that. And I just remember feeling so refreshed when you would pop up on my feed, because I'd be like, wow, this is something on my feed that gives me life. Like this is something in my feed that, you know, it refreshes me. It gives me something that I need to hear versus, you know, I've really just had such a problem with social media recently where I feel like everything is glorified. Like all these things are glorified that don't bring true lasting fulfillment or happiness or anything like that. You know, like it's people telling you where you should vacation, what kind of car and the house and the money and be a successful entrepreneur overnight, you know, and it's like all these people are chasing after these things that they don't realize when they get there that it's hollow. And so what I like about you and your Instagram and what you're doing there is you're sharing something that gives people life like they've never known it. So tell us a little bit about Andrew F. Carter ministry. Tell us about your ministry, about your service work here, and just kind of like what you are excited about for right now.
Yeah, so right now we are a nonprofit organization. So Andrew F. Carter Ministries, nonprofit. We focus on working with different organizations in the community. So we raise money, we accept charity donations, tithes, all of that kind of stuff. And we make sure that we redistribute that money to those in need. So primarily we're working with the homeless. That's one of the things that we do. We also have a church. So we're actually putting on our own services every Sunday. We create content on a daily basis, all Bible-based, scriptural. We create prayers on social media, really just, like you said, trying to put out content and draw people back to, getting their spiritual health in order, just kind of trying to glorify the name of Jesus and bring people back to a place of like, hey, you know, you need to be well-rounded in the sense of, you know, mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, I think that's so important because it's funny. Instagram is very surface level in some cases where it just tells you to focus on those outward appearances and everything like that. But I love that you go deeper. And that's why like I love the podcast. I love having a YouTube channel because you get to go deeper, so much deeper than just what a photo would represent. So, okay, if people are interested in your church, where can they go to hear messages from you and your ministry?
Yeah, so primarily the church that we're conducting is on YouTube. So
Okay.
You go to my YouTube page and we do a midweek sermonette. So it's like anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes where we just kind of check in. And then every Sunday we post anywhere from 30 to 45-minute actual sermon.
Okay. And what about the service work and the outreach with the homeless? Do you have opportunities for people to help you guys with that or to volunteer, or how can they be of service?
Yeah. So our website, andrewfcarterministries.org, is where you can find out more information. You can contribute. You can see the different organizations that we're working with and chip in there.
Okay. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for what you're doing. Like we need it, especially in LA. The homelessness is such a massive problem here. It's something that's really heavy on my heart as well. Something that I've always loved being a part of. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing there. But it's very clear to me that at some point in your life, God became very real to you because you've quite literally decided that you're going to live your life with his purpose in mind and his will for your life. And you're living that out in every aspect. So I kind of want to backtrack. Like, did you grow up in church? Have you always believed? What did your young life look like to your young adult life? You know, what was your journey to God being so real that you've dedicated your whole life to him?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did not grow up in church and really had no idea of who God was until I was 17 years old. That was the first time I heard about God. But before that, both of my parents are drug addicts. So I was born to a pimp and a prostitute. So
Wow.
yeah, both my mom and dad were in the drug scene. They lived in downtown Portland, Chinatown. They were selling drugs, and my mom was my dad's main prostitute. Like that was his moneymaker. So
Wow.
he would send her off, and that's how they would make money. And I am the product of that relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine growing up knowing that and like what that might have like done to you and like the different beliefs and things that you've probably had to work through and give to God through all of that. So how were your young adult years in the sense of you had no direction of God? Like, what led you to having that first encounter or that first knowing that, like, hey, there is a God?
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up with them, like you said, I don't know if we would say we were atheists or what, but, we moved around. I was in and out of foster care. My mom was in and out of prison, in and out of rehab facilities and whatnot. So I bounced around. At an early age, I started selling drugs, drinking, smoking weed, having sex, all at about 12 years old. So
Wow.
I was just kind of following in the footsteps. That was my life norm. That's what I saw. And so I imitated that behavior. And there was no concept of sin or wrongdoing. None of my actions were frowned upon. And there was really no repercussions for any of my actions. I was just kind of a feral child, running amok, doing what I did. And there was no sin. It happened when I was 17, though. I was 17 years old. And, I was pursuing a young lady, and her brother was a Christian. And this guy said that if I wanted to date his sister, that I would have to be a Christian. I'd have to get saved. And so at the time, my mindset was just like, I'm just trying to hook up with this girl.
Right.
I'll do whatever you want me to do. So I sit in this
I think
car
a lot
for
of guys
an
can
hour.
relate.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'll jump through whatever hoops, I'll hear about this guy, Jesus, like whatever.
Yeah.
And so we sat in the car for an hour, and he explained to me sin and the resurrection and the death and the burial of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And at the end of that hour, I ended up saying the Lord's Prayer and accepting Jesus as my Savior.
And you meant it?
At the moment, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I did.
Wow. So hearing all of that for the first time, it really impacted you that deep that you made that decision right then and there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't start living for
Right.
Jesus from that point. It made sense. And it was
Yeah.
just kind of like this paradigm shift of I've never looked at it through that lens. But it was the first time somebody had taken time out of their life to tell me about
Wow.
it. And I had heard about Jesus, right? We'd go to the Christmas play, and there was that little baby in the manger. So in my
Yeah.
mind going into it, Jesus was a fictional character like the Easter Bunny or Santa.
Right.
So to get a better explanation of it, it just kind of, it made sense.
So at what point in your life did you start to want to walk in the ways of God? Like when did you start saying, okay, my life is not aligning with where I know God has, what I know God has for me? And so when did you start to like kind of shift your lifestyle, your habits, the way that you live your life into, okay, I need to start going more of this direction?
Yeah, there's two pieces to that. Okay. So after being saved, I ran amok. I still was smoking weed and drinking. I ended up getting that girl pregnant and married her. So we had a couple of kids. We have 3 kids together. But there was a point when I was about 23. I had done a couple stints in jail. I had gotten in trouble for burglary and for assault. I had gotten in trouble. So I was like, okay, let's give this Jesus thing a real try, right? I knew about it, but I decided to start going to church. And we got ourselves into a church for about, I'd say 2.5, 3 years. And the church that I was going to was very militant in the sense that we were there 7 days a week.
Wow.
And it wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah, that's
looking
a lot.
back, it kept me busy. But what it did is the goal of that church was to prepare people to pastor churches.
Oh,
So
wow.
without going to a formal school or seminary, I was prepared at that age to basically run a church.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what's kind of cool about that? I, in my past, dated somebody that was in AA. And after we broke up, I continued going because I really liked it. And it was every single day. And I never really struggled in the sense that like I'm not an alcoholic, but like I really enjoyed those people because they were really honest. And it was an every single day thing where you had to be intentional out of your day to come and just be honest, say where you're at, say where you want to get better. And I've thought so many times in my head, I kind of wish that there was like some sort of like church meeting, like AA, but like Christ, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I just imagine getting fed like that every single day with a community of people. Like I actually think that would be so cool. Not that it's like necessary for everyone. I'm sure it sounds like a lot to a lot of people, but I've thought that in my head. I'm like, I would actually value that so much.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that you went through that.
Yeah.
So I have to say, I have listened to a lot of your sermons. I try to do as much preparing as I can for these.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something in one of your sermons where you said that you went to this, I forgot exactly what it was, but it was this like, I think it was a 7-day type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And there's this guy who had called people up, and he called you up and he prophesied into your life, like kind of what he saw happening for your life.
Yeah.
Can you kind of share that moment, that experience, what he said and what your response was to it?
Yeah, most definitely. So that same church, we would do a revival periodically. And so we would have traveling evangelists come into our church. And for 7 days, we would fast, and then we would pray in the evening, and then we would go to a sermon. And this guy would get up there, and this specific evangelist who came to town was known across the church community for being very accurate with his prophecy. So if he spoke into your life, we were watching it unfold in other people's lives.
That's
so,
cool.
There's this anticipation of like, I want him to speak into my life. So here comes the revival. Every night's going by. People are, I'm praying. I just need a word. At the time, I'm working in a manufactured home plant. So I'm building houses. I've got 2 kids. And we're struggling financially, right? Making like $500 a week, which back then wasn't a lot of money, still isn't a lot of money, just scraping by. So I'm seeing him bless people. He's calling somebody up and he's like, you're going to have financial blessings. And I'm like, oh, that's mine. Like, please let me get one. It was the 7th night, the last night of revival. He finally calls me up and I'm just like, yes, I'm about to get paid. Like I'm super excited because that's the blessing that, my heart wanted in my flesh. What he ends up telling me is he says, Andrew, you have been called to ministry. And he says that you have words of gold and that you're going to speak to millions of people about Jesus. And to put it into perspective, right? This is the time of MySpace. There's no Twitter. There's no Instagram. There's no Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And I had like 13 people who were my cousins and my aunts and uncles on MySpace. So I'm thinking, this guy just told me I'm speaking to millions of people about Jesus in ministry. I don't want to be a minister. I don't want to tell people about Jesus. And I don't know a million people. I thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up leaving the church.
Yeah. So you straight up left the church after that?
Walked away, yeah. 2 weeks later, walked away, left church, packed up my family and left.
Wow. Was that response just like, this guy is way off, he's so crazy that this thing isn't for me anymore? Was that what was going on?
Yeah, that was the flesh part is I didn't want to be in ministry. Growing up the way I grew up, I wanted to shoot hoops. I wanted to rap. There were so many things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It didn't line up with being a pastor or being in ministry.
Right.
And I thought he was crazy. So it wasn't what I was looking for. And I spoke to my pastor. He told me to stick it out. And I just was like, I'm gone, man. I'm out of here.
Okay, so at what point did you return back, and how long was that span of being like deuce? Yeah. And then what got you back? Because it seems like you were in it, you were like strong in it. You leave. What brings you back with a fire and a force like this? It
was a Jonah moment. And, being familiar with the story of Jonah, God called Jonah to speak to Nineveh. It's not what he wanted to do. And so he left and he ended up in the belly of a well. And, we know that Jonah got swallowed by a well. And after being in the belly of a well for 3 days, he was just like, well, I guess I should probably do what God called me to do.
He's like, this does suck.
Yeah. Like, I should probably follow the calling that God has for my life. And what ended up happening, it was about a 15-year span. Or maybe not 15, about 13 years between there. So I left church. I went to school. I got 2 college degrees. I played college basketball, which from where I grew up, these are all first times in my family. I'm the first one. I was breaking chains. I was breaking cycles. I'm achieving and, setting these accolades and achievements that nobody in my family had done. So I thought I made the right decision by leaving church because I was finding success. Mm-hmm. So, left. I started a gym. So I opened a CrossFit gym that I ran for 6 years. We were making $250,000 a year. So this kid who came from nothing was really like succeeding. But I got to be honest, behind the scenes, our relationship was abusive mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. We were in a bad place. I was taking performance enhancing drugs. So I was taking steroids. I was training 3 days a week, or 3 times a day. So at night I was taking prescription pills and drinking to just deal with the physical pain of overtraining. And so like on paper, it looked like the American dream. On Instagram, you could see, the guy with, the family and the kids, but behind the scenes, man, I was broken. I was tore up. I was empty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just imagine how many people are out there right now looking up to people on Instagram, like you said, or on social media, thinking that they have the life and that they're working towards that, not realizing that behind the closed doors, they're actually so empty. Yeah. I can't tell you how many friends and people I talk to who, a lot of my friends have big followings and, they've built themselves on social, and they're like miserable behind the scenes, and people have no idea because they create the best content. They create the content because no one wants to see a sad person online, right? So they're happy, they're go lucky, they're creating, whatever they think people want to see. And yet behind the closed doors, they're crying harder than they've ever cried in their lives, So it sounds to me like you were seeking fulfillment and satisfaction and wholeness and all these things through the money, the success, the everything, like you said, on paper, but yet you still felt empty.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide like none of this is working, and what led you back to God?
Yeah. So, like you said, I was broken. I ended up committing a crime. So my past came back to haunt me, and I got in trouble. So I hit somebody with a wine bottle, while I was at one of my own gym parties. We were having an anniversary party, hit somebody with a bottle, and I ended up going to prison for 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was, it was transformational in the sense that I lost everything in that moment. The kids, the wife, the job, the career, everything was gone. And I'm not the kind of person, so for me, I'm very stubborn and prideful. That was one of the things that I struggled with. So I didn't run back to God when I was in prison. So a lot of people will, I like to call it crisis faith, when they're in a bind, it's like, oh, God, help me. I turned my back even further on God because I was angry that my decisions, my actions, my choices led me to that. But I was so angry because I had worked hard. I had worked hard to get to where I was at, and I lost it in the blink of an eye. And so, 18 months in prison, I read, over 100 books. I did counseling. I worked on childhood trauma. I did a lot of self-help, like trying to heal my own past childhood wounds and things like that. So it wasn't time wasted, but it wasn't time spent getting closer to God. So basically, when I came out of jail, I had to restart. I had to restart from scratch. I had nothing. And so I started rebuilding, creating a social media, following. But my goal was to be like trainer to the stars. So I was, I've got degrees in physical fitness and public health, and I've got the gym experience. So I was trying to recreate myself based on, the health and fitness industry.
So at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to go back to the church and then back into ministry?
So, about a year, I had spent a year just making up for lost time. And me and my kids, I get my kids every other weekend. They came over and they were like, Dad, let's make a TikTok. And I was like, all right, I've heard a little bit about it. I heard Gary Vee talking about TikTok. You should jump on it. And because I was in the social media realm, I said, let's do it. So download TikTok. And for a month or so, we make videos, dancing, me and the dog and the kids, and playing around. But, one night I was noticing this cycle was happening. I was back at the same place I was before going to prison. I was kind of focusing on just finances and money and travel, and my priorities were wrong. And so I felt kind of broken. And I decided to share a video about my testimony on TikTok, 15-second video. I didn't say a word. I just pointed at boxes, right? The first box said, things God has taken me through. And then I pointed at a box, said prison, divorce, foster care, and then everything else. And that was it. That was the TikTok. That was it. Post it. I go to bed. When I went to bed, I had 200 followers. And the next morning I woke up and I had 15,000 followers.
Wow.
Yeah. My notifications were going off. The messages were filled. And I started reading through them, and people were saying, hey, that message gave me hope. That message gave me, encouragement. And there was one specific one that said, I was going to take my life last night, but I watched this video and I know that other people have gone through what I've gone through, and you still have hope. And so I decided not to. And I just broke right there. I started crying. Holy Spirit came over me. And that prophecy over my life came to the front of my memory. And it was just like, you're going to speak to millions of people. You have words of gold, and you're going to tell people about Jesus. And I was crushed. I was just broken in the spirit right there.
That is so incredible. And it's crazy how one small thing, like, oh, let me make a TikTok, help someone not take their lives. Like, it's absolutely insane. I think it's actually, we do talk a lot about like the problem with social media,
right? But
if you use it for good, and if you use it in the way that you're using it, it can be so incredibly powerful. To actually see that happening, I think is just such a blessing. And it's amazing. I love how you heard this prophetic word. You said no. You went down your own path, and then you end up returning. And I point that out because I know for me in my own life, I have, I've been following God for a long time, but I've not always been walking with God, right? And like sometimes I'll really follow him and walk with him. Then I'm like, I'm going to go this way a little bit though. So I'll be, you're here. I'm going to be right here though. I'm right here, right. And then eventually I'm like, well, there's a 2-year detour and a lot of pain and hurt I didn't need to have, and now I'm like back to where I was. So I got to this point in my life where I was like, I'm done taking detours. Not that I won't ever get it wrong. Not that I won't ever take a wrong left turn sometimes, but like I'm done taking my own detours, the ones that you know that you create for yourself, you know? So it just came to me, you know, this moment of like full surrender, not like here's 90% of my life. I'm going to keep 10 for me. I'm going to compartmentalize this over here, but like, here's all of it. Yeah. And whatever you want to do with it, like it's yours. And It sounds like that's where you were at in your life. So I want to ask, you know, from somebody who has been walking with God, you have really developed this relationship. What is your experience in empty religion versus the relationship with God that you talk about and that you share on your social and even just right now?
Yeah, I see that all the time, and I've dealt with it. You know, you can wear a cross necklace or put a little scripture in your bio and really have no idea who God is or who he says he is or who he says you are. It's so much deeper than, you know, following a list of rules or checking off boxes. You know, we're not saved by our works or our performance. It's not like how the world judges us, right? Our identity is based on our performance and how we act and the things that we do, but that's not how it works with God. Is he loves you as you are. He wants you to change. He wants to change you as you develop that relationship. But that emptiness, I like to call it a Pharisee mindset. It's just because it's all about following laws and rules, but that's just not how it is. That's not a relationship with God.
Yeah. And I can speak to this as well, just because I have so many people and friends in my life, even people that listen to the show, and it's hard for me to put into words the depth and the layers of like what's actually there. And more recently than ever in my life, God has been like just wrecking my heart in the most beautiful way and showing me layers that I didn't even know was there. And I feel like I've been trying my best to follow him for so long, but like what I'm realizing now is that there's just like the deepest layers that people have no idea about. So I wanted to ask you, from someone with experience of not growing up in the church and not believing in God, what's some practical advice that you could give to somebody who is listening to this and says, oh, you're telling me that God isn't just this preset, you know, rules that you have to subscribe to. It's actually a relationship. It's actually something that you can grow and develop and deepen in. What would you tell to them to just get started, to start exploring that for themselves in a real practical way?
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts on that. In developing any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage, there's a couple of things that you can't get away from. If you want to have an effective relationship with anybody, you have to communicate. So communication is key. If I didn't talk to my wife, our relationship wouldn't be too good. So it's the same with God. We have to communicate with him, and that starts with prayer. The other thing is spending quality time. If I didn't spend time with my wife, right, we're not going to be jiving very well. And it's the same thing with God, is you have to spend time with God, whether that's turning on worship music, whether that's watching a sermon, whether that's going on a drive or just turning off your car and your radio and sitting quietly. And then the last thing is learning about one another. So if I didn't take the time to learn about how she responds and what she likes and what she wants, then we wouldn't mesh very well. And it's the same with God. We learn who God is and about him and what he wants from us and who he says we are by reading the Bible. So I've never seen an effective Christian or anybody have a real strong relationship with God if they're not spending time with him, if they're not praying and they're not reading their Bible.
Oh my gosh, it's so helpful and practical. Thank you. Yeah. Where can people go to learn about the character of God? Like if they're like, this Bible thing is confusing, where can I start? What would be your advice for just kind of starting to get to know him?
I always like to send people to the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Like that's what that's the pinnacle of what the Bible is. The Old Testament is all prophecy and, you know, kind of setting the stage for Jesus. But if you want to know the heart of God, it's in the man Jesus Christ. So how he walked, how he lived, how he treated people. Like you know, at the end of the day, he says that there's two commandments, and the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God Almighty with all your heart and all your soul, and then to love each other as you love yourself. And so diving into the gospel, and I would say John. I really like the gospel of John. I would start there, and it just gives you an idea of who Jesus is, what he did, what he stood for, and what he wants from us.
Yeah, that's huge. And when you're reading, I just want to add to this a little bit. When you're reading, guys, look at how Jesus treats people. Look at how he talks to people, how he interacts, who he hangs out with, and how other people react to the people that he's hanging out with. Because oftentimes you'll find that the religious people that are just following these rules in religion, they don't want to hang out with certain groups of people. And that's exactly who Jesus goes to. He doesn't judge. He doesn't condemn. Like, he goes and he loves always. So even in my own journey, it's been so helpful just to go and read and really be critical with my thinking, in the sense of like, okay, what's happening in this scene here? Like, how is Jesus responding to what is said here? And why is he responding that way? And what's his heart posture behind what he's walking through and what he's saying? I think that'll really help. So I wanted to ask you, how do you personally hear God's voice? Like, how does God speak to you?
Yeah, it really depends. And I believe that it differs for each individual, but it's a small, still voice in my head. And he speaks the most when I'm still and when I'm quiet. So, I can worship and praise, and, I can feel that Holy Spirit. When I'm reading, I feel like he's speaking to me as well. But when I get the most downloads, like if I'm going to write a sermon, or if I'm going to answer emails or speak with somebody, it does best for me to just turn everything off, my phone off, notifications, music, and just sit still and quiet, and just allow him to speak.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know for myself, he speaks in a few different ways. I always laugh because, like, I think God is funny, and I think he thinks I'm funny too. We have this relationship where, like, we laugh sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, he knows I won't get it unless he puts it in black and white words. So sometimes he'll literally give me in my head like a black and white word. Like one time I was like, God, is there anything else you want to tell me? And he just says surprise. And then I was like, is it a good surprise or a bad surprise? And then he shows me again, surprise with confetti. And I was like, okay, it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah, but and so I wanted to mention one major way that God has spoken to me in my life, and a way that I've had to mature in it, and I've had to learn to trust it, because at first I would think like, okay, is this just me or is it God, But I would sit there and I would say like, God, I need a verse, like I need a word, I need something, and I'm just childlike enough to follow the first thing that comes to my mind. So sometimes something comes to my mind and I literally make fun of myself. I'm like, okay, stop. That's like a popular verse. That's why you're thinking of it. Or, it's a Gospels. Like, of course you're going to think of that, but then I'll turn to it. And this happened like last week too, where something real happened in my life, and I was like, God, I need confirmation that this just happened. Like, please tell me. And he gives me this verse. It was an exact verse, only one. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's probably me, but I'm going to turn to it anyways. Like, redirect me if I'm wrong. I turned to it, and in that verse, it literally said exactly what had just happened in my life, but like in a story. And I was just blown away. I was like, so I can trust like all of these little promptings. It's so cool. And that's why I say like a relationship with God is so much better and so much cooler than what anyone makes it or than what anyone knows. Like, and I know that it's better than what I know right now, but right now it's like really, really good and really cool. And so I always tell people like there's just more.
Yeah.
Like that's like the overarching thing, is that there's just so much more than whatever it is that you know or that you've experienced. And if you've ever had bad experiences in your past, I'm with you. I've had it too. I've gone to those churches. I've been around those people, and it sucks, but that's not God. Don't judge God based off of human fault and human error. And the truth is, we can't even, we talk about like these bad religious experiences or churches or whatever, but if you think about it this way, people go to a hospital because they're sick and they need to get better. And so there's sometimes a lot of people that go to church, all of us, that have things that we're working through. We're sick in certain ways. And so guess what? We're going to be human and we're going to do things wrong sometimes. Right. We're going to get it wrong. So I think it's best just to like not judge God based off of human, because yes, we're created in his image, but we are not God. Like, we are always going to fall short. So look to the source, go straight to the source. And the source is God's inspired word. That's like the best way to find it. Now, I went off on a tangent there. Sorry. I just had to.
That was good.
But I wanted to ask you, what are some things that have helped you develop and deepen in your faith journey? So, like, have you had mentors? What does your Bible journey looked like? Class? I don't know, YouTube? Like, what are things that have helped you deepen and develop your faith?
So it's not anybody, but it's more of like a philosophy that has helped the most. And it's the same philosophy that I've applied to fitness and success and financial development. And it's consistency and discipline. So if I want to see results in the gym, I have to be consistent. I have to be disciplined. I can't allow my emotions or my feelings to dictate my actions. And it's the same thing in my walk with God. Mm-hmm. And I feel like he reveals himself in those moments, in the moments where I don't want to do it. So I don't wake up on fire every day. I don't always want to read my Bible. I don't always want to pray. I might be tired. I might be exhausted. I might be stressed out. sad, down, like whatever I'm dealing with. But if I allow my emotions and feelings to dictate my actions, I might not ever read my Bible. I might not ever, get up and pray. And it's the same thing with training. I might not go to the gym if I'm sore, and I let that always dictate that. So by getting up and doing what I know I'm supposed to do, I feel like God has spoke to me and revealed himself to me more in those moments where I'm just like, there's that resistance. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to do it today. And then, I do it anyway. And then he speaks to me or reveals something to me or opens a door or an opportunity. So in my journey, and if I could, glean any information or encouragement, it would be, do what you know you're supposed to do. Like get up and do it regardless of how you feel and what else is going on. And in those moments, I believe he speaks to you the most.
That's beautiful. And it's, similar to like a weight loss journey. Sometimes you're going to feel like you're on your diet, you're hitting your workouts right, and you're not seeing progress. The progress is there. It's happening. So you just have to like trust that, have faith in that, and keep showing up for yourself. And God always shows up, like always. Yeah. What are some of the promises of God that you have really held on to in your life or that have helped you? Maybe it's just one, maybe it's two, but what are some promises that like just really have gotten you through?
That God will never leave me nor forsake me. That is something that I hold tight to, because there's times in life where I feel like I'm alone, where or maybe he left me, or he's not listening to me, or that he's turned his back on me, or he's upset with me. And the promise that he will never leave me nor forsake me, I bring that to the forefront of my thinking on a daily basis. So again, regardless of my outside circumstances and what's going on in the world, he's with me. He's there. And then the other one is that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Knowing that even though things are changing, right? You look at social media, there's war, there's famine, there's murder, there's shootings, like everything is changing around us. But I can always rely on God because he's always the same. He doesn't change.
And I think that speaks to how it says that it's the living word of God, right? It's not some old storybook. Like it's living, it's breathing, it's current, because he's the same that he was in the Bible that he is today. Yeah. And that can encourage us, because when you go back and read stories about how God provided for people, how he showed up for them, how he was there for them, you can take encouragement from that to say, then he's going to be there for me too, because he's the same to you as he is to me. Yeah. What is something in your life that you feel like what is one piece of advice that you would go back and tell 20-year-old Andrew?
Trust God. It would just be like I was called to ministry when I was 23 years old, and I took the long route, around. Now I get that it helped develop me, and now I have these experiences that I can help share with other people. And, God's never caught off guard, but I don't know. I'd probably say, hey, dude, you are called to ministry. This is the path that God has for you, and your own ideas, they don't come even close to what God has in store for you.
How has being a father shaped the way that you view your relationship with God?
Ooh, that's good. Patience is big. Having my own kids and knowing that as a father, I want what's best for my children. 100% of the time. I'm not going to steer them wrong. I'm not going to put them in a situation that's going to hurt them. And I notice that sometimes they don't know what they need. They don't know what's good for them. My kids just were here last week, and my son ate. We got him Randy's donuts.
Yes, I love Randy's.
Randy's are so
it's
good.
The best.
Yeah, we had to get it, so we got him 2 donuts. And it's getting late. It's maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, and he has 1 donut. And before he's done, he's looking at me and he's like, his eyes are rolling in his head because he's high on sugar.
I love it.
What do you want? I want my other donut.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
We say, no, you can't have your other donut, knowing that that's not a good idea. And obviously he gets a little upset, thinking, well, you don't love me, or you don't want me to live my best life, but I'm doing that to protect him. And many times that's us, we're upset with God because maybe we're praying for something that we think we need, but he's saying, nah, like you don't need that. This is what you really need. I've got something better, or this is going, I'm trying to protect you right now.
Yeah.
So that has shaped my relationship when it comes to prayer or understanding or direction or guidance, knowing that at the end of the day, God wants what's best for me because he's my father and I'm his child. And so I have to trust that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I have a little dog. He's a Frenchie. His name is Vinny, and he's my entire world. And he is my son. I am his mother. And so I know it's a little bit different, but it's actually crazy how much God has spoken to me through my relationship with my son, Vinny.
I love it.
I remember particularly, I was really pursuing my connection with God at this point in my life. And then it was a moment where God was calling me to walk with him, though, like truly walk with him. And it happened because I was outside walking with Vinny, and I like pulled his leash a little bit, and I was like, hey, walk with me. And God was like, walk with me, like repeated in my head. And I was like, oh, okay, and I was like, okay. And I still didn't then, of course, but I was like, that's good to know that you're there and you're talking to me. But it's like such a distinct moment in my life where God was like, it's time, like, come walk with me. And we both know, like, God's reckless love, he'll always come after you until you finally like get it, and it takes us a little longer than other people sometimes. But yeah, I think that like the parent relationship with children, or for baby children, if that's all you have, it can be such a good like lesson and such a good parallel, because I love Vinny so much and I would literally do anything for him. Right. So I can only imagine, I'm sure God loves me more than I love Vinny. Yeah. Okay, so you said something that kind of triggered a thought. You said something about my best life, right? And so I want to ask, what would like 25-year-old Andrew's best life, what would that look like compared to what your version of the best life, like living your best life, is like now?
Yeah, I mean, I pursued it. I felt like I accomplished it. I was making over 6 figures a year, had the car, had the house, was, traveling a little bit, doing things. It was all about materials. It was all about status. It was all about clout and, having things. It was material. And that was living my best life. Compared to now, it's not about that. I feel like I need to help as many people have a relationship with Jesus as possible. Like that's my life's mission. If when I pass, that's all I want to be known for, is people seeing Jesus in me and being drawn to the foot of the cross. That's all that it's about. We often pray, that people would we pray that people would have a relationship with God like we do. Like I've hit this place where, like you said, he's funny, and I think he knows I'm funny.
Yeah.
And like we have this relationship, and it's up, it's down, it's high, it's low, but he's there. And I just pray that people would have that. So that's like I am living my best life now, because it's walking, every choice, every decision, everything that I do is in order to bring glory to God. So it's no longer me living for me, it's me living for him. And I've never felt so satisfied and content and purpose driven and like alive.
That's beautiful. Wow. It's beautiful to see, especially just because, like I mentioned in the beginning, people are going after all these things that once you attain them, you realize that they're hollow. I actually saw this rapper kid on Instagram. I don't know what his name is, but he's like a kid, right? And he went off on Instagram the other day saying like, I'm literally owned. I don't even own my own bank account. And he goes, look at this car. I just keyed it because of my mental health, whatever. But he was basically saying like, this doesn't matter. Like all this stuff, he has everything, right? He has all the money that he wants. And he's like, none of this matters. Like once you get it, you realize it doesn't bring happiness. And he like had this like outpouring of a hard moment. And I was glad that he shared that, because I think a lot of young kids, they look up to these people thinking that that's what's going to bring happiness, not realizing that all these things have no lasting eternal value. So that you get there and it's hollow. You get there and you still feel empty. And what's beautiful about what you're saying is you're like, I'm actually good right now. Yeah. Like what's cool about the position and the heart posture that you have right now is, and I know this from my experience as well, is that when God does bless you abundantly and exceedingly all you could ever ask for, hope, or dream or imagine for yourself, it's just like icing on the cake. It's like, man, that's a cool experience. Like that's awesome. Yeah. But there's no like attachment, or there's no like heavy weight attached to financial blessing or house or whatever he might bring into your life. Right. Which is cool, because when you are controlled by those things, I feel like you're like this pinball being bounced around and around. You're like a roller coaster going up and then down, up and then down. And when your lasting fulfillment and wholeness comes from God, you're just steady, and everything else is like, ooh, that's awesome. Or like, okay, this is not good, but like you're good. Yeah. Okay. So when you're praying for something and God answers you with a no, how do you handle that? And what is your advice to people who have been praying for something, they get a no, and they're like, God doesn't love me because he said no?
Yeah. I mean, just like with my example with my kids, God knows best. So when I get a no, it's I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm just like, all right, God, like, yeah,
sounds great.
No, it's more of like a, maybe a little frustration. But what it does is it forces me to kind of reevaluate what I'm praying for. Am I praying from my flesh? Is this to glorify me, or is it to glorify God? And I've also realized that sometimes a no, it's not all, it could be a not right now. So I don't always just kind of chalk it up as an L. It's like, okay, it's not happening in my timing, but God's timing is perfect. He makes sure that I have everything that I need. And sometimes I've said this is that a no could be a redirection.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's him speaking to you saying, no, that's not it. Go this way, which would be a redirection, which is also him speaking to us and leading us and guiding us. So, the initial hit of the no is usually like, okay,
Yeah.
God, like, you know best. And then it's like, well, where are we going then? And then I start diving in deeper to understand where the no comes from and where he's taking me.
How do you decipher in your life or determine if you're living for your will or for God's will? Like, what's a good like heart posture check that you could ask yourself, or that people could really like, so they can check themselves? Like, am I living my will or am I living God's?
Yeah. So I always say the closer you are to God, the clearer his voice is. So if I'm constantly pressing in, and a prayer is always like, God, search my heart, search the deepest recesses, the darkest places of my heart, and reveal to me anything that I need to work on. And, bring it to the surface, because I can be hiding little resentments or jealousies or frustrations or, these selfish desires or ambitions. And by constantly checking in with God, I feel like he's good and he's faithful, and he'll bring those things to the surface, whether it's in my behavior or an action, or maybe I say something, I'm just like, I don't like how that sounds. Let me check that. So, staying close into God and really, taking a look in the mirror through prayer and through reading your word.
That's so helpful. And what about when you feel like you can't hear God? Like, there's so much noise, you can't hear him. What's your advice to someone that's like, God's silent, or I can't hear him, or there's just so much noise in my head? How do I hear him?
Yeah. There's two things. The first one is to get quiet, shut down all distractions, go for a drive, no music, no nothing that is going to, go into your ears or that's going to, take your attention off of that. And then the second thing is, a lot of people say God's quiet, but their Bibles are closed. And we spoke about the fact that, God speaks to you in words, like in your head, but God speaks to me too through his word. So if we're not diving in, like, prayer is us communicating to God, but I believe reading the Bible is God communicating to us. He's speaking to us. So prayerfully, get quiet, get alone, and then prayerfully open your Bible and dive in there and pray, God, speak to me. I need to hear from you. I know that you say you'll never leave me or forsake me. It says, if I draw near to you, you'll draw near to me. It says, if I knock, you're going to answer. So here I am. I'm drawing near. I'm knocking, and I know that you're here. Speak to me. And he will.
Wow, that's such an incredible prayer to pray as you head into reading the word. Because I think sometimes people will go into reading the word and they try to just understand it with their head knowledge, not realizing that like you really need God to know God and to be able to really go deep with him there. So I think that's such a good prayer. You guys go back and rewind that, re-listen to what he just said, and pray that prayer exactly, and then get into the word, because that is where God is going to speak to you the most. I know for myself, I had a mentor share with me one time when I was feeling that way. She was like, for a period of time, you and God will decide how long, but for a period of time, shut out everything that is not God. Like, if you want to get closer to God, first shut out everything that is not him. So for this period of time, no music that's not him, no, even no Netflix right now. Not that that's bad, but like just everything that you're doing and consuming, just saturate yourself with him, saturate yourself in his word and his music and his sermons, in quiet and alone time and space. Leave that space for him to speak back to you, like really saturate yourself in him. And that literally changed the game for me. It was crazy how quick I went from confused, no clarity, no direction, that kind of thing, to clarity, direction, God's voice, all these things just speaking into my life in such a beautiful way. So it just shows how we have to be really intentional about what we allow into our minds, what kind of input we allow to come into ourselves every single day. And I think every day we should kind of do a check and balances of like, at what level am I allowing this thing into my life? If it's Netflix, that's fine. Netflix is great. Like, we should all, have a great time doing that. But if we're Netflixing like hours upon hours per day and we're like, God's so silent, maybe you should allocate some of those Netflix hours to God, Well, I wanted to ask you really quickly about your t-shirt and your clothing line, because I'm actually wearing a hoodie from your line right now. So can you tell me a little bit about what it's called, what encouraged you to start it, and kind of what the heartbeat is behind it? Yeah,
so it's Shifted Apparel is the name of the brand. We're Shifted by God on Instagram. But it started with, I had a God is Dope shirt. You were talking about that. So I had one of these shirts. Yeah. And I'm walking through Target. And where I live, where I lived at the moment. Not very diverse. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
There's not a lot of diversity. I'm 6'4", darker complexion, covered in tattoos. I'm walking through this store and there's this little old white lady, and we're probably, 20, 30 feet away from one another, and we're coming at each other, and she's just staring at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I get this like often though. I get people staring at me and, some not so nice comments. But as we're passing one another, she looks at me and she goes, "God is dope."
Wait, shut up.
No, I'm dead serious. This lady, and she just smiled, and I was just like, wow, okay. And right there, it reminded me that what we wear, right, we have an opportunity to not only minister, but just kind of to share our faith. And I was like, okay, I'm wearing a God is dope shirt. I need to have something for myself. Like I'm here pursuing, ministry and whatnot. So let me start my own. And that's what I did. And Shifted stands for 7 characteristics that I believe if we adopt into our life will be more like Jesus. And so the S is selfless. The H is humble. The I is inspirational. The F is fearless. The T is thoughtful. The E is empathetic. And the D is disciplined. So if we adopt those characteristics into our life, I believe we become more like Jesus.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And where can people go to grab a hoodie or a t-shirt or something?
Yeah, so you can go to Shifted by God on Instagram, and that'll take you to the link to our website.
Dope. Okay. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come here and just share your wisdom and words of guidance with everyone. Everyone that's listening, please make sure to go down in the show notes below and click on all of his links. Go support him. You can support his ministry, support his clothing or his t-shirts, or just give him a follow on Instagram and lighten up that feed of yours. You will not regret it. So, Andrew, thank you so much. And I will actually see you in an upcoming episode because we do have your wife in the studio, Kyra. Yes. Kyra, right? Okay, Kyra. Good. I got it right. So we're going to do that interview next. So for those of you listening, make sure to come back and tune in next week because we're going to do a talk all about relationships. So I know you guys are really excited to get into that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we will see you guys in the next episode of Evolve with Emily. Have a good one.